Chapter 26. Who is Soaring Eagle? "May I ask, my dear," inquired Daniel, as he probed through the shelves, "why do you wish to start with the tribes of the woods?" Virginia slowly chewed the morsel of bread in her mouth. Should I tell him why? Is there a more appropriate topic to start with? Well, Your Highness can start with whatever she would like. I just thought that you would like to start with your own people first. I'm tired of hearing about who I am and what these people call me here. I want to know about something that no one is telling me. I want to know about Charles. I'd like to focus on that later on. Right now, some things perplex me, and I hope to have them understood through this study. Oh, Her Highness has taunting questions, does she? You could say that. Daniel brought over his finished handful collection of books and scrolls and placed them on the table. He sat down next to Virginia. "Well," he said, "it is not good for Her Highness to have a confused mind. I will teach you everything that I can. If you have any specific questions, my dear, it would be good to ask them so that I can help." I can't ask him specifics. He might not answer them directly, like how Charles did. Well, I think everything will be understood once you teach me the history of the tribes. Very well. What tribe would you like to start with? Virginia stared out into space for a moment. Well, Soaring Eagle told me some about the tribe of Bloodstar and Burning Eagle. I stayed with the Naomi for a few days when I was hurt and sick. That's about all I know so far. Soaring Eagle never took you to his tribe? Well, he pointed them out to me from a distance one evening, but never took me to them. Well, it was wise for the time that he did not. This is a very peculiar situation. She stared at him curiously. Situation? Daniel stroked his beard, puckered out his lips, and gazed out of the corner of his eye. It's more important that you know now, though. You should know the history of the tribes. After all, if the prophecy is being fulfilled before us now, you will be more involved with them than you might know. He reached over, pulled out a big, rolled-up sheet of paper, and unrolled it across the top of the table. Virginia recognized it as the same map he had laid before them the other day. Daniel grabbed a couple of scrolls from the pile and one book and placed them between Virginia and him. "We will start with the most important facts dealing with the tribes of the woods of Earth Stars," said Daniel. He opened the book to about a third of the way into it and stroked his finger down along the left page until he found the spot that he had been searching for. "Here it is." "Here's what?" "You said that Soaring Eagle has already told you about his two brothers, Bloodstar and Burning Eagle. Am I right?" "Yes." "We will begin a bit further back." He looked down his nose through his glasses at the page where his finger rested. "Virginia, the forest you hiked through, as you probably already know, is called the Southern Woods of Earth Stars." "Right. Once both of these woods were united as one enormous land of forest. There was no north or south that divided its title, and there was no border that separated the lands. Did you know this?" "I think Soaring Eagle mentioned something like that, yes." He looked up at her over the frame of his glasses. "Did you also know that at one point it was never called the Woods of Earth Stars?" Virginia stared off again, trying to think back. No, I never knew that it was called something else. It was never an official title, but the other kingdoms around the woods simply called it the Lame Horse Woods." "That sounds dumb." "Why did they call it that?" "Because the woods were full of tribes that constantly fought one another. It once used to be a powerful empire, a kingdom, but the history of the land became lost in all generations of fighting. All that remained were the many tribes and cities who constantly fought for the kingdom's scepter." "The kingdom's scepter?" "Yes, this land used to have a king who ruled over it. Unfortunately, many have forgotten his name. The only thing they remember of him was that he ruled with kindness, loyal to his subjects, one who empowered them to achieve their destinies. He knew that if they sought this, his kingdom, his scepter, would become more powerful. He knew that sometimes the less constricting your grip of control only gives you more power than you thought. Sounds like an okay king, I guess. He was until his passing. His castle sits on a massive island in the Sea of Mekave, the massive body of water that rests between the northern and southern woods of Earth Stars. For years, the tribes of the land spilled their blood trying to take the scepter of the king left behind, but no one was able to do it. For centuries, there was no peace, until one day a single man appeared in the woods. The inhabitants of the land had no idea who this man was, but soon grew to love him. Why would all of these tribes and many kingdoms listen to a foreigner? Sounds like he was walking into a death trap. Aye, true. However, this man brought a book with a blue stone on the center of its front cover. From it, he read to them. You see, Virginia, this man was one of the first warriors sent out to the tribes to warn them of the fire of Oralmuti that would come and devour them, a fire that no tribal warrior could strike down. There were some tribes and cities who did not like this foreigner, for he was of a people they thought to be their enemy. Some rose against him, but as I said earlier, there were others who loved him and rose to fight to protect him. Of those tribes, there was one that always harbored and protected the fire warrior, as they came to call the foreigner. This tribe was called the Tribe of Little Mountain, and in this tribe was a particular Indian warrior who never left the side of the fire warrior. He was the son of the chief of Little Mountain and was known as Burning Eagle. Virginia listened intently. Keep going. Burning Eagle was the foreigner's favorite pupil. So much so that he asked the chief if Burning Eagle could come and train with him back in his homeland. He said he would teach them the way of the fire and how to listen to Oralmuti. The chief was honored, and so began a great epic of teacher and student, the first time a warrior from the waters of Aletheia took on a student beyond the borders of his own land. What happened to Burning Eagle next? He adopted the arts and ways of his teacher and continued to grow stronger than his teacher could ever have imagined. The legend holds that Burning Eagle always looked to the sky every morning, wanting to go only deeper in his training. Compelled by the fire of Oralmuti and the desire of his heart, he chose to wear the dagger of the waters of Aletheia. The wings of Oralmuti began to sprout from his back as they did for the waters of Aletheia. Soon came the time that Burning Eagle desired to take back to his people all that he had been taught and trained so that they might have the choice to receive the same. He was welcomed with open arms, and upon his return, many began to receive the same teaching that was passed down to him and drink the wine of Oralmuti. Once they drank, they began to shine like stars. Soon thereafter, the tribes around them no longer called them the Tribe of Little Mountain, but the Tribe of Earth Stars, because they shined as if the stars from the heavens were present among the woods. And that is why they call it the Woods of Earth Stars, because of Burning Eagle's tribe? Precisely, but those details come a little later. Oh, sorry. So what happened before the woods were called the Woods of Earth Stars? A division. You mean the Great Division? No, not the Great Division, but one that had a tragic and terrible impact nonetheless. Daniel flipped through some of the book's pages until he found where he wished to read. As I'm sure Soaring Eagle has told you already, Burning Eagle had a brother named Bloodstar. Yes. Then you know that what comes next is not exactly the prettiest side of the story. The chief of the two boys announced that Burning Eagle would be the next chief of the tribe. This outraged Bloodstar. He was the eldest of the two sons, so naturally, he felt it was his right to be the next leader. In his bitterness, he attacked the tribe and tried to rally forces against Burning Eagle. All his efforts came to nothing, for Burning Eagle defeated his brother with the training from his master and left Bloodstar defenseless. Out of mercy and love for his brother, Burning Eagle let him live, but only in banishment from the tribe. His father agreed to the sentence and had Bloodstar excommunicated from the Tribe of Earth Stars to never return under penalty of death. Virginia took a deep breath through her nose. But he did return, didn't he? A saddened expression fell over Daniel's face. Yes, and caused more destruction than before. With him, this time came the dark arts of Skal Galmuderdats, which crafted a demonized ability, enabling Bloodstar to shapeshift into a monstrous beast. A wolf with paws that had nails sharper than any claw they had ever seen, and jaws more deadly than 4 man-made swords slicing in unison. He deceived half of the tribe, and they dropped all that had been given to them to follow a dark power, a power they thought they could control. Bloodstar eventually made his way to the other tribes, imposing the same threat and granting the same offer. All those who resisted were attacked. Bloodstar would have won, but a hope, thought to have come from heaven itself, came to their rescue. Virginia smiled and waited for Daniel to continue. A hopeful smile crossed Daniel's face as he looked at Virginia. A star blazed in their time of darkness and came to their defense. Burning Eagle? Daniel nodded. Burning Eagle and the remaining warriors that stayed true during the time of testing. Even though Bloodstar and his followers proved to be strong, the persistence of Burning Eagle, equipped with all that he had been trained, soon forced Bloodstar to retreat. After pushing Bloodstar back, they shared the wine and ways of Oralmuti with the tribes that had been attacked. If the tribe received the wine of Oralmuti, he would give them the ability to fight back against their foes with the metal of Oralmuti and fire. From tribe to tribe, Bloodstar struck, but Burning Eagle met him. Even though Bloodstar killed some and deceived others, he could never outmatch Burning Eagle, for Orommuti was with him. The tribes recognized the tribe of Earthstars as a place where they could go and train, within the woods. Not long after this, the tribe of Earthstars was known as the central and most popular tribe in all the woods. Even the trees danced and fought alongside them as the fire of Orommuti set them ablaze with life. It was not long until all the tribes submitted to the leadership and authority of the tribe of Earthstars. All the tribes and cities of the forest stepped back and allowed Burning Eagle to take the scepter of the ancient king. The woods that were once divided and frowned upon by other nations surrounding them soon became a sign of hope in the darkness, and was from there on called the Woods of Earthstars, for within its shaded trees shone a people as bright as the stars of the heavens. Virginia stared out into space for a moment, thinking hard about something. But wait, if it was originally called the Woods of Earthstars and the woods were once united in the tribe of Burning Eagle, then how did the terms northern and southern come into the title? Daniel nodded his head, as if expecting this question. He turned more than halfway into the book and placed his finger upon a particular spot on the right page. Pride, Virginia. It is the downfall of mankind, and may we never forget it. While the light of Orommuti was expanding its borders in the Woods of Earthstars, the Kingdom of Darkness had to devise a new tactic. They started at the root, the waters of Aletheia. To make a very long story short, we will focus on one important person, Narumel. Narumel? Virginia questioned. I think that's a new one for me. Who's Narumel? Any lingering optimistic emotion upon Daniel's face soon dissolved. He drew a long breath through his nose, working his best to compose himself and summon the strength to speak. Narumel is one of Aletheia's great oppressors, he said. His history dates back to the time of Rose Cohen and Burning Eagle. He was one of the causes of the Great Division. Wait, interrupted Virginia. How is that possible? Wouldn't he be dead by now? Any human would, yes, but he is not human. Daniel curved the corner of his mouth. Well, in a way, he is not human. Virginia stared at him, confused. I'm sorry, Daniel. I'm afraid you've lost me. Right, said Daniel, turning to face her more in his seat. The creature known as Narumel is not a human. He is a monster from Skal Galmuderdetz, the land of darkness and death. Daniel motioned his hands in the air, giving life to invisible objects in front of him. He has a physical form but cannot stay in it for very long, especially when he is confronted by light. What does he look like? You mean his real form or when he's human? Both. Virginia could almost see Daniel shivering as he stared deep into thought. Terrifying when he's a monster, Daniel finally said. Human form? I'm not entirely sure what he looks like today. Very few of us do. Why? Because he changes forms almost every new generation. Changes forms? How does he do that? Well, more like he possesses a new host. Virginia's eyes widened. Excuse me? Daniel patted his fingers on top of Virginia's hand. Fear not, dear one. He's far from here. Virginia looked off into space. Daniel, I was once far from here. I was in a different world, and they found me. I understand, dear one, but here you have an entire army ready to fight for you. Virginia slowly bobbed her head and shrugged her shoulders. Yeah, that's true. I didn't have that back on Earth. A moment of silence passed before Daniel spoke. Are you okay, Virginia? Virginia shook her head and drew a deep, quivering breath to calm her nerves. Yeah, I'm fine. Daniel stared at her curiously. Are you sure? Virginia tightened her lips and nodded her head. Yeah, I'm okay. I meant to ask, how does he exactly, take a new host? That's an excellent question. No one really knows all the dark details, but one thing that is known about him is that he needs a host in order to carry out all his dark deeds. So he will make promises to individuals he wants to take over. First, he promises them power, the power of Skal Galmuderdetz, witchcraft and sorcery. Blinded by their lust for power, the new individual allows Narumel to possess them, and as long as they do what he says, they do indeed become very powerful. But soon, like a virus, he consumes every part of them until their soul is buried so deep within that Narumel becomes the only one at the helm. In a way, he uses them as a suit, a puppet, to speak and act through. You were no longer talking to the soul that once used to control their own body. You were talking to Narumel himself. Virginia shivered in her seat. That's disturbing. A moment of silence passed between them while Virginia thought to herself. So if I had to guess, began Virginia, he uses them until their bodies age out or something? That's correct, actually, said Daniel. Then he's able to thrive as long as he wants. As long as he has a willing host, yes. You would think that people would see his pattern by now and reject him. You wish that would be the case. However, no one writes down what Narumel is capable of. And if someone does write it down to warn the next generation, there are always many who discard it as ancient folklore. Daniel stared off into the piles of books. Plus, his influence and power grow every new generation. Once he had only his dark fire and sorcery, but throughout the years he eventually possessed a ringmaster. Once he took the ringmaster, he soon took over a king. Daniel looked at her. Imagine the temptation, Virginia. Imagine someone coming to you and offering you a powerful, dark fire that could devour your enemies. Now imagine that power, but also with the power of your ring. You could overtake anything, right? And now that same offer exists for the king, but with his dark fire and the capabilities of an incredibly powerful ring, added Virginia. Daniel pointed his finger at her. Exactly. This was precisely what happened to his newest host during the days of Rose Cohen. You see, Narumel is not the actual name of this demonic creature. It was the name of a powerful ruler who was once an ally of the waters of Aletheia and allied with the rebellion during Rose Cohen's time. His kingdom was to the east of the kingdom of Earth Stars. None of us knew it, but King Narumel became the new host of this creature. And that's how he got the ruler's scepter? Precisely. So now he has this dark fire, a powerful ring, and a ruler's scepter. Pretty much. Right, so we're in trouble. Why do you say that? Well, from what I heard last night, we do not have a ringmaster on our side, let alone an intact kingdom not destroyed by its own civil war. And he has this weird fire, while we have no fire, right? Perhaps I should continue with our history lesson, suggested Daniel. I think that it might inspire more hope for our side. Oh, sorry, said Virginia. So, right. So how does Narumel play into what happened with Rose Cohen and Burning Eagle exactly? Daniel drew another deep breath as his mind reached back into the chronicles of Aletheia's history. Back during the days of Burning Eagle, the government of the waters of Aletheia did not entirely submit to the fires of Oralmuti or El Yamin. They were also under great oppression by a superpower from the northeast, the kingdom of Aphelaham. A secret rebellion formed against the Aphelahamites, hoping to overthrow them. There were leaders in the rebellion who saw the fires of Oralmuti as something that could help their endeavor, while others did not see it as a profitable weapon of choice because they could not control it. At this time, someone else approached the rebellion's leaders, sharing that he possessed another fire they could control, a weapon they could use against the Aphelahamites. This someone else, it was Narumel, wasn't it? She asked. Daniel nodded his head. Yes. The leaders of the rebellion, particularly the leaders of the waters of Aletheia, were deceived by Narumel and sent thousands of soldiers to Narumel's castle to witness and obtain it. It was not until after they reached their destination that they realized they had been deceived. The source of that fire was of Skalgalmudurets. Narumel had turned his castle into a fortress and his walls into a holding ground. This was not the King Narumel they once knew, but rather the demon prince and architect of Skalgalmudurets. His castle, once known as the Castle of the Peaks, is now known throughout Aletheia as the Fortress of the Dam. How does this share relation with the northern and southern tribes? I'm getting to that, dear one. I'm getting to that. But what about the waters of Aletheia, too? I heard that there were some who did not journey with Narumel. What about Burning Eagle? Dear one, I am pleading with you. Please let me continue. I will get to all of that. Virginia shrugged her shoulders. Sorry. Daniel shook his head and pushed his glasses up the bridge of his nose. Dear me, as I was saying, the waters of Aletheia were under the governing rule of the Aphelahamites. If there was the slightest sign of rebellion, the Aphelahamites would send their troops down to slaughter all that rose against them and banish the rest into slavery. Okay, the Aphelahamites, how much did they control exactly? Everything. Daniel paused and bobbed his head back and forth. Well, almost everything. They ruled over the kingdom of Hazakaim to the south, the waters of Aletheia, the kingdom of Earth Stars, and the kingdom of Unhala Navaya To the northwest. There were more, but those were central to us. Virginia stared off into space and rubbed her forehead. That's a lot of foreign names to keep up with. Would you feel better if we took a break? No, I think I'm okay. Please continue. As history goes, the waters made an agreement with the kingdom of Hazakaim from the south and King Nerumel from the east. And, Daniel paused, seeing Virginia rubbing her head harder. In short, all of those surrounding kingdoms that I mentioned a moment ago had an agreement to launch the rebellion. Together, their armies would be enough to regain their own kingdoms and start a new campaign for further alliances with the surrounding neighboring empires to fight and push the Aphelahamites back to their homeland. Virginia pulled her hand away from her forehead and danced it in the air, following an invisible timeline. Got it. So the surrounding kingdoms were finally going to attack the Aphelahamites, said Daniel. Virginia snapped her fingers. Yes, them. I said it correctly a second ago. Anyway, what happened after that? Everything was thought to be set in motion. Thousands of soldiers of the waters of Aletheia departed to receive the new fire promised to them by Nerumel, which they planned to use against the Aphelahamite forces in battle. The king of the waters of Aletheia killed the Aphelahamite ambassador over the nation and sent his body back to Aphelaham's capital to the northeast, announcing the utmost sign of rebellion. Everything seemed to be working out. However, the king of Hazakaim withdrew his agreement to fight against the Aphelahamites, and the thousands of soldiers that departed to the land of the peaks never returned. Of the 4 kingdoms of Unhala Navaya, there are 4 kingdoms of Unhala Navaya? Questioned Virginia, astonished. Yes, dear one. Remember I told you yesterday before we went to eat? Virginia placed her face in her hands. Oh, that's right. Yes, you did. I'm sorry. You really look like you need a break, dear one, said Daniel. Virginia placed her hands on her lap and lifted her head. No, we are going to keep going. I'm getting through this. It's just a lot. Plus, I have more questions after this. All right, if you insist. Yes, please. Okay, so in short, there are 4 kingdoms of Unhala Navaya. Of the 4, 2 betrayed the other 2, which would make the 2 good kingdoms unable to assist the other nations in their rebellion against the... Virginia closed her eyes and lifted her hand. Hang on, I've got this. The Aphelahamites. Daniel clapped his hands. Well done. Correct on both, my dear. Virginia smiled and opened her eyes. As you rightly guessed, continued Daniel, the other 2 nations instantly suffered their own civil wars, rendering them unable to assist the rebellion. Only 1 nation of the 4 soon joined us, but by then it was already too late to save the rest. What do you mean? What happened? The mission would be that the delegates and rulers would wait in the City of the Lion for their soldiers to return from Nerumel's castle, but they never returned. No one back in the City of the Lion knew why. The king of the waters of Aletheia was horrified. He knew it would only be a matter of time before the Aphelahamite forces from the northeast descended upon them, and so they did. But what about Burning Eagle? Couldn't he and his tribe have done something to help? Daniel shook his head in regret and frustration. Confusion was everywhere, my dear Virginia. Burning Eagle and his kingdom did try to help, but when the Aphelahamite forces arrived, half of their troops came through the woods of Earth Stars to flank any of the waters, retreating to the forests for shelter. In addition, the Aphelahamites, along with Bloodstar's army of forest phantoms, attacked the northern cities and tribes of the Kingdom of Earth Stars. Bloodstar had most of his troops split apart and attacked the tribes simultaneously. Because of that, most could not sound for help in enough time, and those who could sound the alarm for help were left feeling abandoned because no one ever came. Everyone was attacked at the same time, it seemed, and no one could run to the aid of the other. The fire of Skal Galmudrets, the Aphelahamites, and the forest phantoms ravaged the forest. Burning Eagle had only one thing on his mind: Cohen. Should I ask him? And what exactly happened to Cohen again? Well, as I'm sure you already know, this was when she went with the soldiers of the waters of Aletheia to Nerumel's castle. Virginia's heart began to race. What happened next? Burning Eagle, of course. Because he was the new king of Earth Stars, he sensed that his kingdom was under attack. He knew that something was wrong with Cohen. Why didn't he go with her beforehand? Why did he stay behind at all? What was his plan? At the time Burning Eagle was here in the city of Gaal, when he sensed that his kingdom was under attack, he and Eliane, a powerful prophet and warrior of Oral Muti, devised a plan. Burning Eagle would go rescue Cohen and the surviving soldiers, while Eliane would rush to the City of the Lion to warn them that something unknown was happening against the rebellion's mission. But by the time Eliane reached the city, it was engulfed in flames, and the surviving captives were led away by the Aphelahamites to the kingdoms of the northeast. "I've heard of Eliane," said Virginia. "Tristan told me about him. Didn't he try to rescue the survivors and his wife, or something like that?" "Yes," said Daniel. "Would you like to know more about that now?" "No, actually. Let's save that for tomorrow." Daniel smiled. "Very well. What else would you like to know?" "Tell me what happened next with Cohen and Burning Eagle." "Well, that's a story that I'm more than certain you already know, dear one. Burning Eagle returned to find his kingdom in disarray. He did his best to rally his forces and fight to save his own kingdom, while he and a band of soldiers flew to save Rose Cohen. Their forces attacked Nerumel's forces and tried to save as many as possible, but they could hardly save any, with all they were up against." Daniel looked down at his pile of books and held up one in the air. "That battle was recorded in detail by Burning Eagle himself. This is a copy of that battle. I would be happy to let you borrow it and read it for your own to see it through his eyes, if you would like." "I'd like that, yes," said Virginia, "but maybe you could refresh me on what happened following the battle?" Daniel rested the book back on the table. "Of course, my dear. In short, after Cohen and Burning Eagle fought against Nerumel, Burning Eagle knew he had to focus only on saving Cohen. Long story short, he and his forces took her and whoever else they could with them back to the city of Gaal. Once there, Burning Eagle and the surviving leaders of the rebellion had to make decisions on what to do next." Daniel pulled out the map from yesterday and traced his finger across it, marking the exact locations of old battle lines. The armies of Nerumel continued to swell and poured into Burning Eagle's kingdom from the east, while the Aphelahamites attacked from the north, and Bloodstar's men ravaged the cities and tribes within. Burning Eagle feared for Cohen's life. Out of great pain, he returned her to her home, hoping to subdue the threat at hand, just enough so that he could return and bring her back. Daniel drew a deep, mournful breath as he continued, but it was already too much to handle. Everything crumbled worse than he could have imagined. At this point, the City of the Lion was overtaken. The tribes of the Woods of Earth Stars were beginning to divide among themselves while still attacking their oncoming foes. Unhalanavaya suffered more than one civil war while also being attacked by the Aphelahamites. The rebellion's financial support was fleeing overseas to escape enslavement and death, and the kingdom of Hazakaim was also suffering its own civil war. Daniel stared solemnly into the past. Division was so high. No one could have predicted this, no one. Virginia gave Daniel a moment before continuing. What happened next? Daniel drew a breath through his nose, composing his strength once again. He looked Virginia directly in the eyes as he continued. Burning Eagle felt he had made a mistake in trying to protect Cohen's life. Out of desperate last-minute hope, he fled to Earth, where he raced to bring her and her family to Aletheia, hoping that with her some miracle would turn the tide, and because he did not want to live without her. But he was not alone. Bloodstar had been crossing in and out of Earth for a long while, deceiving many people into believing Burning Eagle had kidnapped Cohen. When Burning Eagle returned for Cohen, Bloodstar was already planning to kill him there. When Burning Eagle returned to her house, he was attacked by a band of townsmen who were deceived and led by Bloodstar to hunt him down. One of the townspeople had shot Burning Eagle in the side, but that did not stop the warrior. He kept running back to Cohen's house like mad. However, upon reaching her home, he was informed that she was gone, along with her whole family. Grief sank into Virginia's heart. What happened to Burning Eagle? Did he die there? Daniel shook his head. No. He made it back to one of the stone gates hidden deep within the woods. Did the townsmen happen to see the portal? Maybe, but it wouldn't have mattered. They never lived to tell of it. All that remained of them were their bodies torn to shreds. Bloodstar? Aye, Bloodstar. He remains a traitor, even in a world he cares nothing for. Virginia leaned on the edge of the table, anxiety building up within her. And Burning Eagle? What happened to him? Have no fear, young one. He lived many, many years after this event, an event that came to be known as the Great Division. Eventually, the Aphelahmite powers were subdued from the woods, but it left the tribes in shambles, weak and defenseless. Many remained strong and united, while others segregated themselves from the rest of the tribes and cities, holding on to what they had left, given to them by Oralmuti. Most remembered the unity that was once shared with the waters of Aletheia. If it were not for Burning Eagle still being a great king and leading his kingdom to victory, all might have been lost and cast back to the dark days. Even though many cities, towns, and tribes within his kingdom were divided, he worked hard to heal and govern the people with loyalty and care. Eventually, there came another great trial. A threat against Burning Eagle's tribe. You could say that. It was more like against the kingdoms of his sons. It was what? Daniel turned around and looked out the window behind him. It is a beautiful day, is it not? Wait, Daniel, this is serious now. This whole thing just became more frustrating than you might think. Daniel turned around and looked at Virginia, a big smile stretching beneath his bushy beard. I think we should go for a stroll, don't you? After all, why spend all day locked up inside when you can walk and talk at the same time? After saying this, Daniel rose from his seat and walked out of the library. Virginia grabbed her backpack and sword and launched out of her seat. Daniel, wait! Virginia halted. Oh, my shoes. She quickly jumped back, grabbed her shoes, and slipped them on her feet without tying the laces. She darted out the door. Daniel! Dark Cry and his men pulled their hoods over their heads as they exited the back door of the meeting room. He held the door open as his men quietly stepped out of the building and into a shaded alley. Dark Cry glanced around the room one last time before exiting. Lying on the floor were the bodies of the 4 soldiers his men had slain alongside Captain Julian, who was choking on his own blood with his final breaths. Quick and quiet as a ghost, he stepped out of the room, closed the door, and faded into the shadows of the alley. My prince, Dark Cry, said one of his men. Would you like us to search in pairs or individually? Individually for now, replied Dark Cry. Too many together will draw unwanted attention. Hide in the shadows. I've never been in the city before, said another. I'm kind of nervous. Don't be, said Dark Cry. Have you ever been here before, sir? Dark Cry looked at the far end of the alleyway, watching the people stroll along the streets and sidewalks. Yes, many years ago when I was a boy. Where would they be hiding her? Dark Cry pointed to the castle towering over them across the courtyard. Best chance is that she is in the castle, but she could be anywhere. Dark Cry drew a deep breath through his nose. She's close. I know that much for sure. Should we split in half and take either side of the city? Suggested one of his men. This city is unique, replied Dark Cry. Half of it is just farmland, held within the city walls. The other half, where we are, is the city. Makes our hunt half complicated than it once was, teased another. Dark Cry walked up to the arrogant soldier and stared angrily into his eyes. Do you have any idea where you are? The soldier stood timidly, daring not to answer. You're in the city where every other warrior of the rebellion goes to train to perfect their art of war and combat, continued Dark Cry. You are in the center of some of the most elite fighters in Aletheia. Different nationalities, different languages. He stepped closer. Different fighting styles. All of them journey here to do one thing. Learn how to become elite fighters. Do not underestimate how powerful they are. And now they have Cohen in their midst. Now they have hope. Hope because one of the causes of their mission has now returned to them. We cannot destroy that hope if we are dead. Have I made myself clear? His soldier nodded his head. Understood, sir. What shall we do then? Scatter! Keep a low profile and blend in, but be aware. It won't be long before those bodies are found. Soon, word will get out that there are several shepherds to be on the lookout for. When that time comes, hide. Hide in the shadows until nightfall. I will announce the call to attack at that time. Until then, search for her. His men bowed their heads to him and walked down the back corners of the alley, falling out of sight into the shadows. Dark Cry looked above him, staring at the castle that towered over him. His lips curled bitterly as he glared at the familiar structure. He scoffed and walked to the end of the valley, stopping a good distance before exposing himself to the sunlight. Virginia raced down the hallway and opened the stairwell door. She looked down the staircase and saw Daniel making his way to the first floor. Come along, sang Daniel. We will walk and talk. Virginia rolled her eyes and began running down the stairs, slinging her backpack over her shoulder and holding her hands up for balance as she ran. Daniel, wait up! They both reached the bottom floor together. Daniel opened the door and they walked out of the stairwell into the dining hall with a table of rulers and ringmasters. He led the way as he and Virginia walked to the 2 double doors on the other side of the room. Daniel, insisted Virginia, I need to make sure I heard you clearly. These sons of Burning Eagle, tell me more about them. Daniel pulled open one of the big double doors and walked outside. Oh, yes, the sons. They were the offspring of Burning Eagle and Gentle Tear. Virginia walked outside and held her hand over her face from the sunlight. Burning Eagle and who? Gentle Tear, answered Daniel. She was one of the women from Burning Eagle's tribe. Virginia squinted her eyes, trying to find Daniel somewhere in front of her. What? Where is he? Daniel? Darkcry's eyes darted across the courtyard at the echo of a familiar voice. A look of surprise, along with a pleased smile, stretched across his face. Standing on the far side of the courtyard at the entrance of the castle was Virginia. Well, that didn't take very long now, did it? He said. My dear Cohen. His face wrinkled with bitterness as his gaze fixed upon Daniel. Well, what have we here? Continuing your false indoctrinations, are we, Daniel? What have you been showing her about us? Over here, dear one, sang Daniel. Virginia's eyes adjusted. Standing about 20 feet to her right was Daniel, surveying the passing horse-drawn carts passing through the main courtyard. Virginia ran over to him. Daniel, can you share that with me again? Something about Burning Eagle's children. Daniel kept his eyes focused on the city traffic. Yes, dear one, I will, but first I need to find a... Oh, here we go. He waved his hand in the air. Virginia saw a man in a wooden cart pulled by a donkey coming to a halt in front of them. My good man, exclaimed Daniel. The man sitting on the buggy bench was wearing loose, torn red pants and a light blue shirt that was just as torn and baggy. He tipped the rim of his hat at Daniel and Virginia. Daniel, he said, smiling, how are you this fine morning? All's well, replied Daniel in high spirits. However, we are in need of transportation. Mind you tell us which route you will be taking? The man placed his hand on the wooden barrels in the back of his cart. I'm on a mission to take this new water supply to the Southeast Eye. Oh, wonderful. He placed his hand back on Virginia's shoulder. We are in desperate need to get to the training center. If you could drop us off as far as Old Ivy Street, we would be much appreciative. It would be my honor. There is very little room in the front, but the back end is open. You can use that for a bench if you would like. That will be just perfect. Daniel led Virginia to the rear of the cart. Placing his hands on the end, he hopped on and positioned himself comfortably. Come along, he said to her. We don't want to keep this good man waiting long. He has a delivery to make. Virginia placed her hands upon the back, as if it were the tailgate of her uncle's truck, and hopped on like Daniel, dangling her legs over the edge. Are we ready? Asked the driver. We are indeed, sir, replied Daniel. With a click and a kiss from his mouth, the driver slapped the reins on the back of the donkey, and the cart began to move. Darkcry watched carefully through the passing crowds as Virginia and Daniel climbed onto the back of the cart and began to ride down the street and out of sight behind the buildings in front of him. He looked behind him down the dark alley, counting 2 additional alleyways that branched off his. He looked back at where he mentally pictured Daniel and Virginia on the street across from him. This street I'm facing runs parallel to theirs, he whispered to himself. I can't just mingle in the crowds. Daniel will spot me for sure. Without another moment's thought, he quietly dashed down the alley and turned right down the first connecting alleyway. He raced past old trash cans and littered waste. His alley spilled into another one that faced the street. He paused and poked his head around the corner. Staring carefully, he focused his sight across the street, through another alley on the other side, and waited for the cart to pass. My Prince Darkcry, came a familiar voice. Darkcry jumped in his place and gasped. He looked to his left and saw one of his men beside him. 3 of us are coasting the houses by the sea while the... Darkcry grabbed his soldier by the tunic, pulling him close, and looked down the alley like before. Shut up and look down the alley. What do you see? In the street, sir? No, not the street directly in front of you. Look through the alley across the street and into the other street beyond. Watch and wait for it. A few seconds passed when suddenly a horse pulling a cart passed by. The soldier's eyes widened. Is that really her? Darkcry smiled. It is indeed. He pushed his man out in front of him. Now go and follow them. I'll be in the alleys behind you, following closely. You're not coming with me, sir? That man she's with. He will recognize me if I get too close. You know him, sir? Yes, again many years ago. Who was he to you? Darkrai pulled his hood over his head and began to walk down the alley across from him. Follow them! Virginia stared at the ground in wonder and perplexity, watching her untied shoelaces dance and bounce along the stone road below. Daniel, she said, turning toward him, I don't know if this story will get more depressing, but what happens next? Oh, yes, exclaimed Daniel, as his eyes widened. Well, Burning Eagle died as an old man, but before he did, he sat his sons down before him and did what he had done for all their lives. He told them of the days of old, of the Great Division, the waters that remained imprisoned behind the fortress of the dam, Bloodstar, the battles against the kingdom of Hastily, and many, many other things. He handed them a book as well, containing different prophecies that were believed to have been given to him by Oralmuti. Of those prophecies, one remains the most cherished among the inhabitants of the southern woods of Earthstars, and is called Hope of the Stars and Waters. How does it go? Asked Virginia. Oh, well, I must say that I do not believe that I could chant it as well as the Indians could, but he cleared his throat. I will recite it for you. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and began. Lost in a land long forgotten lies an ancient mystery, and remains an unfinished era, a story untold by history, added Virginia. Yes, said Daniel with a smile. You've heard this poem before. Yes, the Naomi sang it one evening during dinner. May I ask, what does it mean exactly? It was a prophecy that Burning Eagle gave to his sons and the citizens of his kingdom. It stood as a reminder that there would come a time when the sons of Burning Eagle would separate, followed by a time when they would reunite again. Wait, said Virginia, if Burning Eagle prophesied that his sons would separate and then reunite, couldn't the whole ordeal just be avoided if they found a way to remain united? I don't know, like seek a counselor, anger management therapy, something? Daniel smiled. Remember what I said earlier, Virginia. Pride is the downfall of all mankind, and may we never forget it. So they did split apart, then, didn't they? Sadly, yes, they did. But Burning Eagle planned to give them an advantage and a chance to save the kingdom. On his deathbed, Burning Eagle gathered his sons and loyal subjects to him. He told them of the time when the king of Unhalanavaya passed away, that he divided his scepter into 4 individual scepters, one for each of his children to rule over a portion of his kingdom. What was once a massive kingdom was now made up of 4 kingdoms. Unhalanavaya would remain united so long as they willed it together. But after saying this, Burning Eagle divided his scepter in half, giving one to each son, one to rule the north of the kingdom and the other to rule the south. His last words were almost a re-quote of what the king of Unhalanavaya said to his 4 children. Daniel closed his eyes and spoke. He told his sons, I grew up in a kingdom void of a king for generations. Soon our walls, our land, and our dignity faded away as we became leaderless and bloodthirsty for power. During my reign, I was assigned to be a servant to these people, to lead them into unity under Elyamin's guidance. The choice to continue walking a path of healing, restoration, and dignity is now in your hands. The prosperity of this kingdom can last so long as you will it together. Daniel opened his eyes. Sadly, his sons did not listen to him. After Burning Eagle had passed away, there was a dispute about reuniting the scepter, and if reunited again, which son should be the next king. The argument for rights grew too strong, and the older brother took his family and all who chose to follow him to the north, where they continued as a separate kingdom. Along with this division came a choice of blessing as well. In addition to the medal of Oralmuti, each of Burning Eagle's sons became expert warriors of both the fire and the wing of Oralmuti. However, as the separation grew deeper and deeper into time, the older brother desired only the fire of Oralmuti, and the younger only held on to the art of the wing of Oralmuti and no longer the fire. Together they would be strong, but divided, they would be weak. Well, then why didn't they just simply unite? Daniel looked down at Virginia as if expecting her to know the answer by now. Oh, right, she said. Pride, huh? Daniel nodded his head. But is there any hope of them getting back together again? Daniel gave Virginia a big smile. I think more so during our time than you might know, dear one. However, as of now, they have remained separated and practically enemies to this day. But, she tried to ask her question differently. What happened exactly? There came a time when Oralmuti spoke to both kings of the woods of Earthstars, giving them a special task, to run to the aid of his people, his waters who were trapped behind the fortress of the dam. Both tribes refused because it would mean they would have to work together to have victory against Nerumel. As punishment for their disobedience, the fruit of their pride, Oralmuti withdrew the blessing of his fire from the northern tribe and the blessing of his wing from the southern tribe for a season of discipline. Although his spirit would never leave them, the depth of their gifts would be withheld for a season of repentance and return to a new generation, ready and worthy for the fight ahead. Within the book of prophecies that Burning Eagle wrote, he assured that this would happen as a sign of their rebellion against Oralmuti and his waters. They had forgotten their origins, and this would give them time to reflect upon what they had done. Nonetheless, it was prophesied by Burning Eagle that the wing and the fire would return to his descendants, both leading up to and during the time of Cohen. Sounds promising, but has anything actually happened to fulfill that promise? Yes, indeed, as a matter of fact. In Burning Eagle's book, it was written that there would be 2 stars that would appear in the sky as a mark that Oralmuti would return first his wing to the descendants of Burning Eagle. And followed by this, sometime later, there would be another star, marking the time when he would soon return his fire. But Oralmuti would give them to Burning Eagle through Cohen. And through Cohen, the fires of Oralmuti would return to all Elyamin's warriors. Don't you see, Virginia? It's the continuation of where we last left off so long ago. Oralmuti has been faithful to give us a second chance today, a chance to continue the mission and spread his fires throughout all Aletheia. Virginia focused on him for a second, and then looked off into the distance, staring aimlessly at the city life that passed by the cart. Please, don't let it be me he's thinking of. I'm nobody. I don't want to fight. I don't want to spread this fire. Please do not be me. Are you all right, my dear? Asked Daniel. Yes, she answered. But let me ask, how can you be sure that now is the time of this continuation? I'm glad you asked, answered Daniel cheerfully. A long time ago, the first star appeared in the sky. Following this star was the promise of the wings of Oralmuti. This brought on... Sorry, Daniel, interrupted Virginia. I'm having a hard time staying up to speed with this timeline. Could you please skip ahead to our time? I apologize, I'm just overwhelmed. Yes, I understand, dear one. Well, the good news made short is that the second star appeared in the sky not too long ago. Virginia drew a deep breath and forced her question out. Is this the star you all spoke about the other night at the dinner table? Precisely. She stared around again, falling deep into thought. So wait, hang on, is that it? The cart came to a stop. We're here, sang the cart driver. Old Ivy Street. Darkrai raced down the end of the alleyway and stopped. Across the street, he spotted Daniel and Virginia sliding off the cart. He carefully looked down the street to his left, spotting a massive circular arena not too far away. So that's where you're taking her now? He looked back at Daniel. Coincidence, is it, that you just happened to take her there the same morning we sneak behind your walls? There are no coincidences, right? That's what you used to tell me, anyway, wasn't it? Darkrai gnashed his teeth as his lips tightened bitterly. How did you know? Daniel hopped off the cart. Virginia slid off, not even aware of her surroundings. She heard faint voices, which subconsciously she assumed to be Daniel and the driver bidding each other farewell. Virginia closed her eyes. I can't take it anymore. I have to know. She felt a hand touch her shoulder. She jumped out of her trance and saw Daniel staring at her with concerned eyes. Are you okay, dear one? He asked. What? Well, I called your name 3 times and you did not respond. Is everything okay? Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I was just thinking to myself. Well, I trust that everything is in good shape then. Yes, quite well. Good. Then we must be moving along. We have about 7 more blocks to walk before reaching the training center. He held out his hand along the sidewalk that ran down Old Ivy Street. Shall we? Yes, please. Lead the way. They both started walking. Daniel crossed his arms behind his back and held a strong, upright posture. Virginia fiddled with the straps of her backpack, biting her lower lip and looking this way and that. Oh, I need to ask him. I have to confirm it. Daniel? Yes? I just can't ask him plainly like that. It's what I've been avoiding this whole time. Beat around the bush, Virginia. Just beat around the bush. Please go back to the story earlier. What happened next with the 2 tribes? Oh, of course. I'm sorry. I got sidetracked in the excitement of the prophecy. Anyway, as time continued, the Kingdom of Darkness also had in mind to divide the northern and southern tribes. In the night, there was an attack on the trees that stood out in front of the fortress of the dam. As you might recall, I wish I had my map with me, the northern and southern woods are divided by the Sea of Mekava, and to the east of that lay a part of the woods that contained some of the strongest trees of the land, and to the east of those woods was the footstep of Narumel's castle. Narumel feared that if the tribes reunited, the trees would fight with them. With that kind of might, he thought they would become too strong for him to defeat, so he sent out an army of witches and wizards to pour water upon the bases of the trees, starting first with the olive tree, and then the rest of the trees. But there was something wrong with the water, wasn't there? Correct. This water had a problem. Unseen before the human eye was a dissolved drop of poison, strong enough to bring down the mightiest tree in the northern and southern woods of Earth Stars. The trees did not know it until it was too late. They drank the water delightfully, for it was also mixed with sweet honey and nectar. However, every single tree that drank of those waters fell before night's end. Virginia almost stopped walking in her tracks. My dream! That's right. She shook it off quickly and put it aside. But what did this do? It further divided the two tribes. If the two sons, now each a chief of his own tribe and a king of their own kingdom, were to unite and attack Narumel, he would see them coming, and there would be no tree nearby to fight alongside the sons of Burning Eagle. Virginia drew a deep breath through her nose. Just ask him this one. What were their names? I'm sorry? The names of the two sons of Burning Eagle? Oh, I see, yes. The youngest was called Leaping Bird, and the eldest Laughing Horse. Virginia tried to ask her next question smoothly. And Leaping Bird is Soaring Eagle's tribe, right? Yes, that's right. Her heart began to pick up in pace as she released her next question. And did he join this tribe, or was he born into it? Oh, born into it, of course. Virginia swallowed, trying her best to keep herself under control. I don't know how to ask this next question without sounding awkward. So he's like a typical citizen of his tribe, or are there different ranks in his tribe? She kept her eyes straight ahead as beads of sweat rolled down her face. Oh, what are you doing? She could almost feel Daniel's eyes staring at her with many questions of his own. He hasn't told you anything, has he? Questioned Daniel. Virginia shook her head. Not at all. Well, goodness, he's certainly of a high rank, that's for sure. He's a prince of the southern kingdom of Earth Stars. Right, but a prince by blood or by order, like a title given to him by the king for service or inherited by blood. Daniel's eyes widened. My, he could keep a secret. Virginia's heart raced faster and faster. Just tell me. Remember how I told you that Burning Eagle divided his scepter in half and gave one to each of his sons to rule the kingdom? Yes. Well, Soaring Eagle is to inherit the scepter of the southern kingdom. He's a prince by blood. Virginia's eyes widened. I was right. He's a direct blood descendant of Burning Eagle, set to become the new king of the southern kingdom of Earth Stars. Virginia froze in her tracks. I knew it. Virginia, asked Daniel, staring back at her. Are you all... Daniel? Jumped Virginia. What is going on? Daniel jumped back in alarm. Dear one. Oh, just keep talking, she said, waving her hand in the air. Just keep talking. What happened next? No, don't do that. Tell me about the prophecy. You kept mentioning how Cohen would unite the tribes again. How is this going to take place? Daniel shook the frightened look off his face. Well, when the Great Division took place, a mighty earthquake shook the land and divided the waters of Aletheia from the rest of Aletheia. As the prophecy foretells, when Cohen and Burning Eagle reunite, the tribes will look upon them and remember the unison of old. How? How will Cohen and Burning Eagle reunite, Daniel? Well, through matrimony, of course. The same love that united Cohen and Burning Eagle in the days of old will not rest until it reunites them in the time to come. A love that is not restrained by time and space. Virginia stared at Daniel as if he were a mirage in a sweltering desert. Matra... Her vision faded and went completely dark.
This is the end of Chapter 26. Tune in next Thursday for Chapter 27. If you'd like to listen to the next chapter ad-free ahead of everyone else, then subscribe to Early Access and tune in on Sunday. If you like what you heard, please like and subscribe and share with your friends and family. It really helps the show. We're available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all major podcasting platforms. What Shines with the Dawn was written and created by C. Taylor Eason. Copyright Christian Taylor Eason, 2024.